What's up everyone, my name is Darren and I'm a medical student at McMaster University. If you're interested in becoming a doctor, I know how valuable your time is, so here are some timestamps which will allow you to skip to any part of the video that you find most interesting. I'm going to be breaking down every single activity that went on my medical school application. But I'm not doing this as a suggestion that you should emulate every single thing I did in an attempt to get into medical school. I'm gonna outline it so that you guys have a better idea of how you can turn things that you're already interested in into something that might look good on your medical school application. At the end of the day, everyone's path to medicine is unique, and people on the other side of the table want to see that you are a unique person that has unique interests that separate you from the rest of the applicants. In a sense, it's almost ironic because since everyone is trying to fit this cookie cutter mold of what they believe a perfect medical school applicant actually is, what makes you stand out is just saying, forget about that, I'm just going to do what I love to do. The one major advantage that I had in applying to medical school was that my church pastor was actually a retired professor at the University of Toronto in the Department of Medicine. Some of you will call that
sheer dumb luck.
I would refer to that as God's blessing, but regardless of your worldview, I know how valuable it is to have a mentor guiding you along the way, which is partially the reason why I wanted to devote a portion of this channel towards helping you get into medical school, regardless of your race, age, or socioeconomic status. This is where I get to talk about my plan. I put so much work into these 4 plans that I'm almost sad that I didn't get to use my plans B, C, or D, but hopefully one of you guys will get to use it and that will make it all worth it. The plans I made really prioritized speed and cost effectiveness. That's because I come from a relatively low socioeconomic status, and I knew that neither I nor my family had the means to fund a bunch of fancy degrees before actually becoming a doctor. Obviously, my plan A was to apply to medical school after 3rd year, but my plan B was actually to do a co-op term, which is where instead of returning to classes in the fall, I'd go work for a company, I'd be bringing in a salary, and I wouldn't have to worry about maintaining my GPA. That was so appealing to me because after 3 years of trying so hard to maintain a 4.0 GPA, I kind of just wanted to sit back and relax and just do whatever my boss told me to do. My plan C was obviously when I returned to school in the fall, I'd finish my thesis or finish my major in biochemistry, and then apply again. And my plan D was to do a master's degree and then apply after that. I knew that for me, my backup plan was just to keep applying and applying and applying and applying and applying because that's just what I wanted to do. Like, I just wanted to be a doctor. I've broken the application process down into 4 basic factors: your objective, subjective, awards, and essays. And the way the application process works is that it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to move up the triangle unless you've solidified the foundation. So for example, if you don't have good objective measures of competitiveness, which are your MCAT and GPA, then it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense to do a bunch of extracurriculars. In terms of the subjective, which is the next rung up the ladder, I've made a fancy acronym, patented by yours truly, called REVA, which stands for Research, Extracurriculars, Employment, Volunteering, and Awards. Now, if you're wondering where I got these categories from, they're literally from the application that I used to apply to medical school. So these are each discrete sections within your application that you will have space to fill. Now for the moment you've probably all been waiting for. I'm going to go through my application line by line, every single thing I put on my application, which starts before I even knew that I wanted to be a doctor. I broke it down by timelines so that you kind of have a sense of when you might start to think about doing certain things along your journey. It's broken into semester 1, which is September to December, semester 2, which is January to April, and then summer, which is May to August. That's 12 months, right? Yeah, I got it right. Yeah. Grade 11. What was I even doing at grade 11? Probably being a waste man, if I'm completely honest.
Yo, mans don't deal with no Excel no more. No juicy fruit no more, dog. All I'm dealing with, premium mints, dog.
Anyways, so in first semester of grade 11, I was assistant captain of my high school volleyball team. Go Trojans. Second semester, I did absolutely nothing besides go to school and probably play League of Legends as soon as I got home until I went to bed. Pentakill! Pentakill! Oh my! And the summer of grade 11, so the summer between grade 11 and grade 12, that's when I started realizing that my family was actually struggling financially, and that led me to get a job as a dishwasher, and I was quickly promoted because of my competence in the kitchen to a line cook. Now, I did work other odd jobs, like I did roofing for a week and I hated it. I was a landscaper for 4 days and then I found out I was allergic to grass, but I didn't put those things on my application because I don't feel like I could have spoken to them meaningfully at all. Senior year. Oh man. I think it's important to keep in mind that I didn't actually know I wanted to be a doctor until the transition between semester 1 and semester 2. So basically everything that I did in grade 12 I did because I enjoyed or because I felt that my family needed me to do it. In terms of extracurriculars, I continued being assistant captain for the volleyball team, and I was an orientation leader for grade 9 students. Volunteering, I was a science fair judge both semesters, and I started reffing volleyball on the side because I thought it was fun. I like reffing volleyball. I like keeping score. It's enjoyable. In semester 2, I wasn't playing volleyball anymore, so that meant I had extra time to go back to work and become a sales associate. I worked at Abercrombie & Fitch, and then later became a seasonal sales associate because I went off to university, and I was a science tutor in the science clinic in my high school. In the summer between grade 12 and first year university, I had my first publication and was also awarded Canada's Top 20 Under 20 for synthesizing a compound used in the treatment of breast cancer. Jokes! That didn't actually happen. Grade 12 was also a pretty pivotal time for me because I had to choose my major. I had to choose what I wanted to do for the next 3 or 4 years of my life. And I was actually really torn between medical science at Western, chemical engineering at McMaster, and business at Laurier. I know, 3 completely unrelated fields, and that's probably a topic for another video because I just love learning about anything. It doesn't really matter what it is. The reason I went with medical science at Western is because I knew that a general science degree would actually contain most of the prerequisite courses that I needed to be able to apply to any medical school in Canada. So that was one piece of thinking out of the equation. And the other thing is I actually enjoyed science. Like, I took all 3 sciences in high school. I only took 2 maths, so I guess that makes me less of an Asian. Anyways, I took science because it made the most sense in terms of efficiency of preparing for the MCAT and applying to medical school, but I wouldn't just say do it for that reason if it's not something you actually enjoy. If you have an interest outside of science and you are really passionate about that, then I would say it's probably better to go with that route because that will also make you a more unique candidate, and bringing diverse perspectives into medicine is what makes the field evolve over time. First year university, this is where the magic happens. In all seriousness, this is actually the part of your application that most universities will pay the most attention to, and that's because they want to see that you can actually handle the full course load, which is a requirement by the way, plus all these other things that they oddly expect you to be doing when you apply to medical school. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm just going to acknowledge this fact because it's a concern that my mentor raised, it's a concern that my parents raised, and it's a concern that pretty much anyone else who I told that I was going to Western and was interested in applying to medical school was concerned about. It's just when that party life starts to get in the way of your dream to go to medical school that it becomes dangerous. If I wasn't ready to take a pop quiz about everything I learned during the week, I didn't go out. And for me, that meant that in the initial stages of university, I basically just studied all the time. As I got into my more senior years and started being able to manage the course load a lot better, being able to understand when I actually felt prepared with the material, that's when I started spending more time with friends and having a more vibrant social life, if you can call it that. I always found it really odd because there were some people that would literally party on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then by the time it came to apply for medical school, they were like, wait, why am I not a competitive applicant? I didn't say anything because obviously that's not my place. Like, I don't want to tell someone what to do with their lives. But it's like, if you want to apply to medical school, there are obviously some sacrifices that you will have to make in terms of your free time. If you want to apply to medical school, realize that you will probably get major FOMO because you're going to be seeing your roommates, your hallmates, and your friends going out to party and be social and do all these fun things. Meanwhile, you have to hit the books. I don't know how else to say it, but that is just a fact, and it's something that you learn to deal with. So without further ado, in my first year of university, first semester, I basically did absolutely nothing in terms of Riva. I've added 2 extra columns here, that's hustle and apps for applications, and that's because I think it's important for everyone to understand the timeline that you need to apply for things, because oftentimes by the time everyone starts thinking of applying for things, those positions are already gone. You want to be early to the game. Hustle is anything I did that was related to getting into medical school that didn't directly go on my application. So in my first semester, I really just did not touch any extracurriculars because I knew that I had to get my objective foundations first. I needed to make sure that I was keeping my grades up. I just wanted to focus solely on making sure I had a good, strong grip of the course material before I started adding anything else to my plate. It's extremely difficult when you're just entering university because you're going into a new environment. Now you're not having your parents cook for you and you're learning all these new skills about living independently that we previously relied on someone else to take care of. And it's just really overwhelming to try and start too many extracurriculars right in the first semester of university. Even if you need to take more than that, I have a feeling that I probably could have taken my whole first year off and I still would have probably been fine. The one thing I did actually start doing in my first year university was I became a Facebook nerd. And basically what that means is all of the science courses had Facebook groups where students would ask questions to other students, and I would literally just answer those questions. It's pretty crazy to believe, but this one way of giving back to the community I was a part of was actually one of the most important activities that I could have taken on during my whole undergraduate career. As you'll see as we progress through my application, being that Facebook nerd actually helped me a lot because people knew that I was someone that was giving back to the community, and I didn't do it with this intention, but when it came time for me to run for an elected position, it basically meant that anyone running against me was doomed, and any club that I tried to start was automatically successful because I just had so much clout behind me. During the winter break between my first and second semester of my first year, I returned to Abercrombie & Fitch during the Christmas holidays to work as a seasonal sales associate. I started cold emailing professors to try and secure a research position for the summer, and I applied to be a hospital volunteer at Sunnybrook Hospital. I applied to the University of Toronto's Youth Summer Program to be a camp counselor, and I applied for my local Pre-Med Society's VP Communications role. Fortunately, all 3 applications were successful, so I began in those roles right away. I continued as a seasonal sales associate for Abercrombie & Fitch, but I actually took the time at the start of the summer to go back and visit my family in Malaysia. I was 19 at the time, and the last time I had gone back to see my family was when I was 7. After all of my positions had finished at the end of the summer, I went to volunteer at CEF Ontario's Camp Good News, hence the acronym CEF. This is a camp targeted towards underprivileged youth in the GTA. It's a camp that I attended as a camper growing up. To give you guys some perspective of the type of population that attends this camp, I know at least one of my former co-campers was murdered in an incident surrounding drug trafficking a couple of years ago. The reason that I continued to go to this camp and volunteer as a counselor throughout my undergraduate degree was because of A, the impact it had on my life, and B, I never wanted to see another kid end up in that same situation that my former co-camper found himself in. In terms of hustle, during the whole summer, whenever I had spare time, I studied organic chemistry. And that's because I had been told that organic chemistry was probably one of the hardest courses to take during second year, and I really wanted a 4.0 in that course because I did not want it to tarnish my perfect transcript. Not my transcript wasn't perfect. I just really wanted to do well in that course. And all in all, I ended up studying about half of the material for the course based on the textbook chapters. So it basically covered me to the midterm, and then I was learning things for the first time, just like everybody else in the class. And of course, since I really loved and really missed volleyball at the time, I applied to be a volleyball coach for the upcoming year. Second year university. Honestly, second year university was probably one of the hardest years for me in terms of coursework. The material was just a lot harder than first year, but at the same time, because I had been studying so diligently throughout my entire first year, I had better study habits, and as a result actually got better grades in second year than my first year. In terms of extracurriculars, I continued in my role as VP Communications, but the 2 major pivotal activities that I participated in were joining Altitude Mentoring and the Leadership and Academic Mentorship Program. Basically, these 2 programs hooked me up with upper year science students and junior medical students that had recently got into medical school and could tell me what the process of applying was like. These people were so immensely helpful in my application. I don't think I would be where I am today without them. So if you're watching this, you know who you are. Thank you so much. I can't begin to list all the favors that they have done for me, but in terms of the top 3, I would say they pointed me in the direction of how to actually go about getting a research position, so where to look for grants and awards. They reviewed my applications before I submitted them to OMSAS, and they actually scheduled practice interviews for me so I was ready. And all of this was free. They volunteered their time. Anyone can apply to become a mentee in one of these 2 programs. I continued as a seasonal sales associate during the Christmas holidays, and I continued coaching volleyball during the entire year. That was probably one of the most rewarding experiences for me because I absolutely love volleyball. The following year, I actually went on to win 2 gold medals. But in all fairness, I owe most of the credit towards the head coaches, Dave, Adam, and Amanda at the London Volleyball Club. This next point is something that I wish I had been doing since first year university because I really exercised a lot in high school, but that kind of fell off a cliff when I was focusing so hard on my grades. In hindsight, my grades in first year probably would have actually been better if I'd been exercising, because the mental clarity that you get from doing anything physical that makes you sweat and puts you in the moment of that activity you're doing just clears your head and allows you to focus 100 million times better than you were before you'd actually exercised. And I know there are different views on this, but my personal belief is that if I'm going to be someone that's counseling other people about their own health, then I would like to be in a position where I'm actually taking care of my own health. In terms of other hustle points, I upgraded from cold emailing professors to actually meeting with them in person. And that's because under the advice of my mentors, I was now emailing them with grant applications instead of just saying, please, please, please give me a research position. It works as a mutually beneficial relationship that way, because when you go to them with a grant application, they say, okay, if this application is successful, that brings money into the lab. But it also benefits you as a student, because when you get a grant approved, then you get money to do research as well. You're not just volunteering your time. In terms of prospective future endeavors, I applied to be an orientation leader for first-year students, and I started my campaign for pre-med president. I was really hustling in my second semester of second year. I was literally doing all the same extracurriculars I had built up to this point. I got a promotion from VP Communications to President of the Pre-Med Society, primarily because of the Facebook nerd thing. Like, everybody already knew me, so they just voted for me, and I started training as an orientation leader. Honestly though, the thing I look back on and makes me go, Darren, you're completely nuts for doing that, is I started prepping for the MCAT car section in January. That's 8 months before my scheduled test date. I knew that for science students, cars was typically the hardest section on the MCAT by far. Non-traditional students who are more used to reading and writing essays typically do better, but for me, I knew that was going to be the section I really struggled with, and that was true. When I first started practicing cars in January, my score was 123, so that is the 35th percentile. But by the time I got my test results back from my September write, my score jumped to 128, which put me in the 90th percentile. You're gonna hear myths that you cannot improve your car's score. That is completely false. It is possible, it's just very hard. You need to practice so much reading and trying to think like the AAMC wants you to think. I applied for NSERC, DUROP, and BSERP, which are basically just research grants. Your school has them, if not some other similar program to it. And what that allows you to do is apply to get a summer job in a research lab. And it's beneficial to the professors because they get money for taking you on as a student as well. This is something that my mentor showed me, and I'm so grateful for it because it allowed me to pay the bills while also getting my research in. I'm gonna have to take a real deep breath before I talk about the summer after my second year, because it was the hardest summer of my entire life to this date. The only reason I did everything I did that summer is because I knew I wanted to get in after my third year university, once again to save those tuition and living costs of doing a fourth year of my undergraduate degree. Fortunately, one of my grant applications was successful, so I began into a full-time 9-to-5 research position at a pretty decent lab at my university. But that's not all, because of course I was also studying for the MCAT, which meant that as soon as I finished work, I went home, exercised right away to get that boost of energy, ate dinner, and then studied the MCAT from 7 to 11 p.m. Monday to Friday for 4 months until my test date. Now, on the weekends, I also did practice tests, which meant that Saturday I was doing a full-length practice MCAT every single week during the summer. And Sunday I was reviewing that practice MCAT test. I know it sounds crazy, it sounds like a lot, but oddly enough, I didn't actually burn out because I just had that fire in me. I wanted to be a doctor so bad that all of this work actually became sort of enjoyable to me. And I know that sounds crazy, but I actually enjoyed the process of learning, and I learned to love the struggle. My first time experiencing burnout is coming up in my third year of university, but during this summer, believe it or not, I did not actually burn out. Honestly though, I owe a big part of the fact that I didn't actually burn out to learning the practice of meditation during this same summer. It's really not hard to learn. You literally just sit there and observe your breath, but what it forces you to do is become aware of your bodily sensations. So I was more aware of when I was feeling really stressed and needed to take a break because I'd started meditating that summer. All in all, if I were to summarize the 3 habits that really empowered me to be able to do this grind that I'm telling you about, to be able to accomplish all these things, I would boil it down to 1, eating healthy, 2, exercising, and 3, meditation. So let's recap. 9 to 5 research, 5 to 6 gym, 7 to 11 MCAT. Somewhere in there I would meditate for 10 or 15 minutes. In terms of Riva, because I was a Facebook nerd, one of my friends approached me and said, hey, why don't we start a club together called the Genetics Mentorship Program? And to be completely honest, she did most of the work. Della, if you're watching this, thank you so much. But like I said before, that really speaks to the value of giving back to your communities, because when people see that you're willing to put yourself out there and give to the communities without expecting anything in return, they're more generous with what they're able to do for you as a person. I really struggled with this next decision because even though my heart was telling me to go back to Camp Good News and help those kids from underprivileged neighborhoods that I was once a part of, I had so much going on. It was just so, that decision was so difficult for me because I was literally like, okay, is this going to prevent me from getting into med school? Ultimately, I ended up going back to Camp Good News because I said to myself, even if it means that my dream is delayed for 1 year, I would just not be able to live with myself if I saw another life lost due to drug violence. This is crazy. Like, how did I even do all of this? Like, okay, I guess the big thing that is hanging over everyone's head right now is the fact that on top of everything that I was already doing this summer, I actually had to apply to medical school. So that meant I had to write 6 essays for the University of Toronto. I had to design my autobiographical sketch, and I had to contact my verifiers. Anything you want to put on your medical school application has to be verified by another person. And that makes sense because we want applicants to be honest. So I had to contact all my verifiers, and last but not least, I had to ask my references for letters. Okay, 1 more year. I'm starting to get tired of my own voice, but anyways, here we go. In first semester, I continued as pre-med president. I was an orientation leader for first year students. I played intramural volleyball. I continued in my genetics mentorship program vice president role, and I was coaching volleyball every Monday and Wednesday for approximately 2 hours per session. Honestly guys, I really burned out, and I burned out hard at this point because I was just doing way too much stuff for my own good. If I look back at it, I don't even think a lot of these things that I was doing were helpful for my application, but I did them anyways because I thought they would be helpful. Really and truly, the only things that actually came up in my interviews were the activities that I was actually passionate about and actually cared about. If you feel the pressure to start padding your resume as a pre-medical student, I mean, sure, do it, but if you're gonna do it, at least enjoy what you're doing. Don't do something solely for the purpose of making your application better. Now, because my plan B was to do a co-op after my 3rd year, I had to start going to mandatory co-op sessions in order to apply for co-op jobs during the next year. On top of all of that, before I even knew I had an interview, I started interview prepping, and that's because I was just so confident in my application that I wanted to get ahead of the game as much as possible. By this point, you guys can probably realize it's a common theme that I like to get things done well before they're due, and I think that was pivotal in my success in getting into medical school after third year. In second semester, I continued doing all the extracurriculars that I had started in first semester, as well as everything leading up to that. And I decided to go on a limb and start a club called the Western Meditation Society. It survived for maybe 1 or 2 years after I left, and then it kind of fell apart. A really nice perk of my program was that I got to do a research course, which meant that I was able to be in the lab and actually do research, which counted towards my application, but I also got a university credit for it. So it was kind of like a 2 birds with 1 stone kind of thing, and I really recommend it to anyone who thinks they're interested in research. Around January of second semester is when interview invitations started rolling in. I got an invitation at U of T, Ottawa, and McMaster. Ultimately went to McMaster, but that's when I started feeling the pressure, and I said, okay, it's time to really step up my interview prep game. So instead of just reading about medical ethics, Canada's healthcare system, and politics, I was now discussing these ideas with other pre-meds that were also applying to medical school that year. And on top of that, I was attending in-person mock interview sessions through my school's Student Success Center. I highly recommend you look into those early because they fill up super fast. Leave a comment below if you want me to make a video about how I prepared for my interview, but as this video is getting long already, I'm going to leave that for later. After my interviews, I felt extremely lost because I had just spent the last 3 or 4 years of my life building up this identity of a perfect medical school applicant, and now there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. I just had to sit and wait for the final decision. I was so lost that I was literally walking on campus one time, and a girl I barely knew looked at me and said, hey Darren, and I was like, I'm lost, like straight to her face. And looking back, she probably didn't know whether to laugh or feel sympathetic for me, but the whole point of this story is you cannot root your identity in something as fragile as your career, which can be taken away from you at any point in time. For me, the answer is my faith, but for you, the answer might be something different. All I know is that when you root your identity in something that is fleeting and temporary, you expose yourself to feel very damaged when that same thing is taken away from you. Of course, I still had my plans B, C, and D to keep up, so during the semester I continued applying for jobs through my co-op program. I applied for a research position at Sick Kids Hospital in downtown Toronto and was ultimately accepted for that, and I went back to CEF Ontario. I'm not going to talk about it too much in this video, but if you're curious, here are the awards that went on my application. Third year summer, oh my goodness. Third year summer was so crazy for me because it's the moment I actually got into medical school, but it didn't go the way that I thought it would go. On May 8th, all Ontario schools release the results, so whether you have been accepted, rejected, or waitlisted. And guys, I'm telling you, I was checking my email vigorously from the second I woke up, and it was so demoralizing to see that I had been waitlisted at all 3 schools despite putting in so much effort and so much grind for the last 3 or 4 years of my life. I was super down. Between May 8th and whenever it was I got accepted, I literally didn't want to talk to anyone, and I think that goes back to the point on rooting your identity in something that can be taken away from you. But it was such a special day on May 28th of 2018 because it was my 21st birthday, and on my 21st birthday, I actually got into medical school after putting in all of that effort. Like, even just talking about it now, I'm literally getting chills in my entire body. It was the moment I was waiting for so long. I just remember sitting over dinner that day and all the excitement had welled up. I'd seen a friend and talked all about it, and then I was literally bouncing around on the subway home, and finally over dinner that night, I was sitting at the table with my mother and I just bawled my eyes out. I just started crying tears of joy. It was the first time in my life that I'd ever had an experience like that, and nothing has replicated it to this day. As you can see, I made a whole lot of mistakes along the way. I hope this has been helpful to your journey. One thing I haven't touched upon is on the subject of luck. For all I know, the file reviewers played volleyball themselves, which would have made me automatically more relatable to them. But if you focus on the factors that are within your control, rather than those that are outside your realm of control, you will give yourself the best shot of fulfilling your dreams. Thanks for watching the video, guys. If you found this helpful, leave a comment below and tell me what you want to hear about next.
Yeah. Free as a bird, on light wings I ride. Free as I fly.